Calling all indies, calling all indies. It appears there are more genres out there that we need to talk about. So we are throwing up the indie symbol for all you passionate true believers to grab a hold of as we begin Season 2 of Genres. Today we're talking about the comic book graphic novel genre with our guests.
Josh Nealis. I'm CEO of Cutthroat Comics out of Findlay, Ohio. We've been going about 6 years. We have one kid's book. We have numerous comic books. I think we have 10 out right now. We also do actual for real books, which we have 6 out and about to be 7 here with the next couple weeks.
Hi, I'm Madeleine Holly-Rosing. I'm the writer-creator of the steampunk, supernatural, prose, and graphic novel series, Boston Metaphysical Society. We will be launching our Kickstarter on March 30th for our 4th sequel called The Book of Demons.
I'm Dave Whalen from Correct Handed Comics. We put out multiple books throughout the year. I'm currently working on issue 15 of our ongoing series, The Offspring. Issue 14 came out in late January. We have multiple one-shots, 100-plus page graphic novels, miniseries, and actual novels. And you can find them all on correcthandedcomics.com.
Hi, I'm Bobby Nash. I write comics from my first love, so I write comics and graphic novels, and I also write novels and short stories and stuff like that as well.
I wanted to start the conversation about this particular. It's not really a genre, but it's a way of a different way of conveying a story, and so I figured it was a kind of a cool thing to include in this show because it is a bit different. There are different rules. There's different things that you have to follow, and certain tropes and certain things that go on, and obviously the storytelling aspect of it is shortened quite a bit. Although a lot of times it's continued on throughout a series or many issues beyond, so it's kind of serialized in that respect as well. But what initially attracted you to do this format, and how do you feel as a storyteller? Is it something that you really enjoyed doing, or was it something that you had to get used to in terms of how to tell the story within the amount of pages? It's 24 typically, right? That's a typical graphic novel.
Somewhere around there.
Yeah.
Single issue. Yeah.
Yep.
I fell into comics almost by accident. I had originally written Boston Metaphysical Society as a TV pilot while I was at UCLA Film School. I have a film and TV background, which, by the way, helps a lot when you come into comics. And it was suggested to me that to help sell the project, to create a graphic novel. And so that's what I did. I actually went back to school, learned how to write comics, and then proceeded to originally ignore what my instructor said. Was basically, okay, take the pilot, read it, and then throw it in a drawer and ignore it instead of just trying to do a direct adaptation, which is, of course, that's what I tried to do originally, which didn't work. And then when I threw it away again, I came back and was able to adapt it in a form that was appropriate for comics. And it was a learning curve. This was really my first foray into comics. I was not a big reader of comics at all prior to this point. So my education was swift and merciless, as they say. But I, over time, and it's been almost 8 years now that I've been in the business, and I love writing comics. It's an absolute joy because for me, it forces me to create a story. The story, you really have to boil it down to the essence in order to make that page count. And that page count is important because you have a thing called a budget and you have to stay within that budget. So, here I am.
Yeah, the fun part for me is the telling stories in multiple different genres. Like I said, I have an ongoing series that's like an action thriller, The Offspring, and it's an ongoing story throughout. Like I said, issue 15 is coming out next month. But one of the fun parts for me is the one shots that I've put out. I've put out 4 of them so far, all different genres, all different subjects, all different characters. And for me, when I first started doing the one shots, staying in the 24 pages was a little tough because there was so much the story that I wanted to tell with these characters. And until I started to really embrace the idea that there could be more there and not have to shove it all into 24 pages, then it really gave me the insight to not have to completely spell everything out, to be able to leave some mystery, to be able to leave some more for the reader, to be able to maybe add in the gaps if they want to, and be able to continue to tell stories with that character in the future. So even though there's a few one-shots that I have out of multiple different characters, multiple different genres, there's so much there in all of the stories that if I wanted to continue to tell stories with those characters, I can. It's a one and done. They're one and done stories, but there's so much depth that I think to the characters in the story that they could easily continue. And for me, every time I get somebody who has read one of my books going, I want to know what happened here with this. Why why this character? What happens to this character after throughout the end of the story? And my answer is always, you'll probably see more, but also I like to leave that little bit of mystery to be able to have the reader put their own ideas and feelings into the story also, to make themselves part of the story. And for me, that's part of the fun there of 24 pages.
I mean, I got into comics the way most people do. Back when I was a kid, I liked comics. I liked the cartoons, and now I love the movies. But the thing about comics that's different from an actual novel, and it's not more childish, but you get the child inside of you that jumps up more because you have these thoughts, you type them out, and you give them to your artist. In my case, I'm a writer. So you give them to your artist, and then he starts sending you pages, and you're seeing your imagination literally come to life. I'm sure it's similar, when you write a screenplay or a pilot or something, and that gets made, and then you're watching the actors act out everything. I mean, it's like Christmas. So, and then of course with comics, like David mentioned, it is tough getting that character to develop in 24 pages or 23 pages, whatever you're doing. So for me, I had three separate series going on, and now they're merged into one, which I'll be doing a Kickstarter in like 3 or 4 months for that. But it took me 3 books to get this story arc told. And now when I wrote issues 3, I was like, now the people that have been reading these can finally see the character of each character, see who they are and their story and who they are as far as why they did this or said that. So, you have to be patient, but you also kind of have to hurry. You have to find a nice balance in there of, give the reader enough to make them come back, but also leave some story on the table to have more to write.
I blame Spider-Man. It's I was a big fan of the Spider-Man cartoon when I was a little kid. They would run in the afternoons after we got home from school, and so I fell in love with this character through the cartoon. And I have a vivid memory of the first comics I owned were Spider-Man comics, and they used to have these 3-packs where they would have 3 comics in like a plastic bag, and you could see 2 of them, but you couldn't see the one in the middle, so it was always like a mystery. And I remember seeing this 3-pack, and it had 2 Spider-Mans in it, and so I remember just begging my mother for these, and so I got those. Turned out it was a 3rd Spider-Man in the middle, and it was 3 consecutive issues. And I remember just I already knew this character from the cartoons, but reading the comics was this whole different thing. So it made me want to create comics more from the art side. I was thinking I wanted to be a comic book artist. That was my thing. And it just turns out I'm not a professional caliber artist. but I was writing stuff, and suddenly, where other artists were coming to me, wanting me to write for them, and so very much like Josh just said, that collaboration, there's nothing as exciting when doing comics as getting art in your inbox and seeing how the artist has interpreted your script. That's one of the things that I get out of doing comics that I don't get as much doing novels or short stories or things like that. There is that back and forth. Both of us are adding things to the story. The artist can put little flourishes that will inform things that you might not have thought about, or give you just a sense of character. And so I love that back and forth, because in doing comics, the whole is more important than the two parts separately. Yeah, so I love the camaraderie and the collaboration, because I don't get that as much with the other stuff that I do.
Coming from a screenplay background myself, learning that there's a lot you don't say and there's a lot you don't put in. Description very much a no-no in writing screenplays. I mean, because the element of collaboration comes into play. But what I've discovered about that is it's made me a tighter writer. It's made me a stronger visual person. I can get to the story quicker. I can get to the heart of the matter quicker. Have you found that with writing comics you all have written prose and books and stuff. So have you found when you're writing a book or doing another medium that you have that inherently now in you because of the fact that you were writing something that's 24 pages and it has to be precise and it has to have the collaborative visual element to it, so you need to let that artist do their art as well?
Well, when you're writing a comic script, most of what you write, most of what I as the writer put in that script, the audience never sees. Because I'm putting in things for the artist to know. So, because the artist needs to know what's going on, because if you're writing a novel or a short story, or even in the comic, our audience, we're teasing things. There's a shadowy character over here doing something. Who is it? Well, the artist needs to know. So there's a lot of stuff you're putting in there for the artist to use as their foundation to build the art on top of. So most of the stuff that I do as a writer is only seen by the artist, is not seen by the reader.
Very similar to a screenplay. Screenplay has that same aspect.
Yeah. So like with a screenplay, dialogue becomes the most important thing for me, and then finding ways to work that into the art. And if your artist can sometimes draw the characters doing things that makes you go, I don't know, I no longer need this character to say these words, because the art conveys that. Where you might have a character saying something silly like, I'm so mad right now, as just simple dialogue, but the artist can draw it in a way where you go, we got it. We don't need this dialogue.
Yeah, I'm in a weird position where I've been on both sides of the aisle. I write and draw. So a lot of my stories are written and illustrated by me, but I've been in a position where a writer will send me a script and I'll be drawing it. And sometimes I'll need a little bit more information from the writer. But a lot of times I think if we've gotten to that point where we're collaborating, they know that I also have the best interest in heart for that story. And they trust me to be able to communicate the idea visually. And as a writer also, I've handed script off to artists and said I don't really have a like if it's a character design or anything like that, I want to see what they've got. I want to see what they have. We've gotten to the point where we trust each other enough to be able for me to be able to say, this character, you can make them look however you want to, or in this scene, I want specific things happening. But if you have other little things that you want to add in there to be able to just continue to add depth, go for it. I've been in writing rooms though, where as the artist, not the main writer, where they've said it needs to be this boom, ba boom, ba boom, ba boom, ba boom, and my answer is, okay, it's your story. So, obviously I can't see inside the head of a writer and exactly what they're seeing, but for that process of talking it out, talking the story out, of thumbnails, of giving them quick sketches, of giving them page by page quick sketches to be able to say, is this where you were looking for? And a lot of times the writer will say that's not, but I like where you're going, keep going with that. Or sometimes they'll say change it. I think being on both sides of the aisle, I'm always visual first. I'll always be an artist first. But as a writer myself, it really does help me to be able to communicate ideas to other artists and other writers to be able to help tell that story better.
Yeah, when I'm working, I've worked with two main artists for Boston Metaphysical, Emily Hugh and Gwen Tavares has been on board for the last 3 issues. I'm always very specific about certain things that I need in the story visually to either develop character and or story. Sometimes certain pages will have to have a certain pacing to them for the story, and I will describe that. And I'll also give her research material too, because I'm dealing with essentially, early 19th century Boston and other cities. And so, you can't expect people to just like know what that looks like if they've never experienced, done research on their own. So I'm always handing over research material, or if I'm doing something for an anthology, I will send along images for the artist to inspire them. Just say like, hey, I found this weird looking plant in Australia. Wouldn't it look really good on an alien planet? Go play with it. And then, let them go do their stuff. Yeah. And it usually turns out pretty awesome.
I mean, I do the same thing. I send visual cues sometimes for, so I do really bad storyboards when I write my comics. And sometimes I have the page in my head and I'll draw it out really badly and then write from there. Other times I write the page first and then draw it out. Sometimes you can give your artists the freedom, and pretty much there's sometimes I'll just draw a square as a panel and say, do whatever you want. I mean, this needs to be said or whatever, but do whatever you want there. Other times I'm very specific. I need an orange vial in his left hand. His glasses needs to be tilted and he needs a smirk, So it's fun doing comics because you get that collaboration, as where with novels, it's all me. And there's a lot of, I don't want to say fat in books, but there's a lot more to describe because there's no visual to it. Mm-hmm. So the comics, your artist is doing half the work for you or more. It probably takes them longer to draw than it does for me to write a page, for sure.
Yeah, and I think too, like you alluded to, like the similarity between screenwriting and script writing for comics. Mm-hmm. I try not to give the artist camera directions. That's let them do what works best. Mm-hmm. So I save those for when I absolutely need it to be something. If there's a reason it needs to be a bird's eye view, then I'll put it in there. But otherwise, you kind of leave that open to your artist, so your artist has some freedom to play. But yes, but pacing was mentioned also. Pacing is very important. Planning your big shocks and scares to be page turn reveals. Mm-hmm. That's a very important thing that you have to plan ahead as you're writing the book, because you want all of your surprises to be on even numbered pages, mm-hmm. visual surprises, mm-hmm. Like the equivalent of the monster leaping out at you. Yeah. You want it to be on an even number page, because that's what you're going to see when you turn the page.
And of course, the to be continued and the cliffhangers, which a lot of us has been trained as writers cringe when we hear things like that. But for comics, especially if you're doing a series, they're kind of essential in certain ways, right? I mean,
I love a good cliffhanger, though. Cliffhangers can be fun.
I usually, when I'm coming up with the stories, the first two, like if it's a 3-issue story arc, the first thing I write is, what am I ending with in each story arc? Where's my ending, and how do I get there? Yeah, those last pages go, oh, now I need to know what happens. I hope people say that is one of the most important things to me. The first page, to grab them, and then the last page to keep them grabbed, if that's the right way to say that. So to have them continue wanting to read the book. Yeah, I love doing those. Are one of my favorite things about writing comics, to be able to have that last visual image to go, oh, now I need to know what happens.
Nice.
Hopefully.
Yeah,
it doesn't always come easy. There are times where you change the visual. 3 weeks later, I'll go, oh wait, that's a better visual than what I had to begin with, even though it still tells the story. And that's the one great thing about being the artist, is you can adjust then you can grow and change and make it better during the process, especially when you know where you want to end.
Yeah, you always have the da 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 da, you know.
Well, that's the thing too with being a writer and instead of an artist, because sometimes you get like you could go back and change it in a book. Like as far as like the book I just finished, it's like 83,000 words, and I'm editing right now. But I can, I've been going back and tweaking little nuances and stuff. But when a comic is drawn and colored, like if it's messed up or you want to change something, you're gonna have to pay the artist even more. So you really have to be on point with all that stuff. From my perspective, where I'm paying him out of pocket to do stuff.
Yeah. When it's locked, it's locked.
Yeah. Or
and that's the worst part. 10 weeks later,
once.
after it's locked in, 10 weeks later, and you wake up at 2 o'clock in the morning and go, oh,
Yep.
Oh well.
Or I had one once.
Save that one away for later.
Yeah, I had one once where the artist left out a very important detail in the art, and the publisher gets it and goes, "The artist forgot to put this information in here. You need to fix it in dialogue." Because we don't have time to send it back to the artist. Fix it. And so you have to then write extra dialogue where it was something silly like, oh, look, over there's whatever it was. And it's clearly something that's not there. Yeah. So, yeah.
I've actually had a colorist fix something that was in the art. I'm like, can you make the colorist make this go away? And she did a beautiful job. So I can say, yeah, you can do some stuff in the middle, but it is limited.
And there was a Domino Lady comic that I worked on. And when the book came out, we realized the artist forgot to draw her mask on in like 2 pages. And so for the trade, we had the letterer fix it.
The devil's in the details.
Yeah.
And when you're editing your own book, I mean, I think I had something similar with a scuba mask in the last book, where he was starting to send me colored pages and I didn't catch it, because he'll send me the pencils and inks and then I'll kind of look it over and make sure. And I didn't catch that he forgot the scuba mask. And I was like, dude, go get the scuba mask on those pages real quick before you do this.
Yeah.
When we were doing the original 6-issue miniseries, and one of the issues, the extras I added was I went through and I explained all the mistakes we made and how we fixed them.
Yeah.
And I remember one reviewer said, like, wow, that was a gutsy move just to, to admit that you screwed up here and that you had to go back and, okay, here's the before and here's the after. And if you go to this page, you'll see how it ended up. And, it happens. It's part of the process.
I think more and more these days, people love that. People want to see the process. They want to see that they're not the only ones that screw up stuff from time to time. People who are building towards a career. And I think that that's one of the fun things, like all the behind the scenes stuff and the YouTube channels on whatever movies or books or comics or whatever you're reading. I think that's for me as a fan of those things is one of the best parts to go, oh yeah, we had to go fix that in post because we had to put some CGI in there because we forgot to put that in. And for comic books, I don't think a lot of people understand that the artist isn't just drawing a headshot of somebody talking. They're drawing the whole background and everything that's going on. If you have a big crowd scene, you've got to figure out where everybody is. And if you turn that camera angle, you need to have everybody turn with it, or people are going to notice and it's not going to look the way it's going to take them out of the story. So having all those pieces in place, all those people where they need to be, all the pictures on the wall and and room for lettering and narration is tough. And I think that as an artist, as a writer and an artist, it's difficult to kind of lose your way if you're not really paying attention.
Sometimes too, it's easy for us as writers to do things that we don't realize it's hard when you go like 500 Roman soldiers come over the hill, and then Chris goes, "What the?"
Yeah.
And that's panel 1.
Yeah. Panel 1.
As long as it's only panel 1, and then you can zoom in and only draw 30 soldiers after that. Okay, that's fine. Sometimes it's fun to mess it up on purpose to see if anybody notices. If you have a vase somewhere with flowers on it, and there's one panel way in the background, the vase is upside down, to see if anybody notices.
Yeah.
Usually they don't. I've done it a couple times, and people will say, "What was going on with that thing right there?" I'm like, "Oh, you noticed it. You're the only one that's noticed it so far." That for me, that's one of the fun things too, to be able to do with that continuity, where it doesn't affect the story too much. It'll just be a fun little detail that you can add in to mess with people.
I love Easter eggs. So all my books and comics are full of them. And especially when the artist is drawing stuff and he sends me a page and I look at it, I'm like, hey, put a picture on the wall, but make it say like this or that. or put like my first book was called Stuffed Squirrels and Porcelain Angels. And in one of my comics on a shelf is a stuffed squirrel and a porcelain angel, like stuff like that. You know, I get a kick out of it because I'm going to notice it and other people aren't. So it's like, haha.
That's awesome.
Or the best part is when people start to notice. Like people are noticing. That's great.
Yep.
If somebody wants to get into this crazy world of comics and graphic novels, what is your most sage advice for them? How to start and what would you say for them? Something that you had to learn the hard way, or maybe you didn't know going in that you faced that you want to make them aware of in doing this?
What was critical for me were taking those sequential art classes. And I was very fortunate in those classes that, one, the instructor was amazing, and he and his wife are published graphic novelists and TV writers. We had screenwriters and colorists and professional writers within the class. And I also ended up with, I think, like two or three mentors that essentially taught me the business. And for that, I'm forever grateful. And I wouldn't be where I am now without that. Plus the group synergy of being in a class. I also found my first artist through a friend of mine in one of those classes. So between the networking and just the education, I would always recommend that someone start with taking a course somewhere, meeting people, getting to know people, going to cons, introducing yourself to artists. I know when I first started out, artists just ignored me because I didn't have anything. I said, I'm looking for an artist, and constantly ignored until you finally produce something. And then once you finally get at least one issue done, then other people start taking notice.
I definitely second the convention part, especially like you mentioned. That's people that are working artists and working writers. Go to their table, talk to them, hang out at the bar. You know, the bar is like classroom at night with people talking about work. Go to panels. There's always panels on, you know, getting into the business or what you're doing in the business. You can learn a lot, you know, of firsthand knowledge from people that are doing it. Classes are also excellent. I took a class once. It didn't so much teach comic books, but it taught comic strips, which utilizes some of the same, you know, the same logic and the same, you know, way of doing things. And yeah, you can pick up details and learn tricks anywhere.
For me, it's read, write, and draw as much as you possibly can, as many different genres as you can, as many different, not just comic books, but any kind of novels, any kind of stories that you can get to, poetry, anything that you can get your hands on to read. Always be, as a writer and an artist, always be reading, always be writing, and always be drawing, and trying to do it from real life as much as you possibly can.
When people talk to me about this, I say you better develop thick skin real quick, because you're going to stand at a con and people are just going to walk by and they don't care who you are. They don't care what your books are about. Even your closest friends and family, probably 2/3 of them don't give a shit what you're doing. So you're going to get more love from strangers than you do some of those people sometimes, you know. And it's not that the people that don't care don't want you to succeed. I mean, they do, but they got their own things going on, their own life, their own kids and work. So it's you're going to get no's a lot, and it's not personal. Don't take it personal. That's just life. That's how people are. I was in a band for a number of years, and I was the drummer. I was also the manager, and I would call clubs. I would email clubs. I would send out press kits. And legitimately, there was probably 300 no's to every one yes.
That's awesome.
And comic fans are fickle too.
No,
They like you this month, they'll hate you next month.
Yeah.
It's weird.
Especially if you kill off one of their characters.
Exactly. Well, you blow up Cleveland. That's
Yeah,
a
right.
whole demographic that just